Welcome to the Land to Lots podcast, powered by Launch Development Finance Advisors. And now your host, Carter Froelich.
Hello, everybody. This is Carter Froelich, and welcome to the Land to Lots podcast. In today's episode, we're going to be continuing our discussion on the land residual analysis. And for those of you that may not have heard the part one of this series, I encourage you to go back to listen to that prior to jumping in to the continuation of our first podcast. But as a recap, the land residual value, meaning the price we can afford to pay for land, equals the gross development value of the project, defined as what the project will be generating in terms of revenue, less the costs to achieve those revenues, meaning, and this excludes land, obviously, but it would be infrastructure costs, home building costs, development impact fees, financing costs, marketing costs, professional soft costs, etc. And it also includes developer profit. So we subtract those, the sum of the costs from the estimated gross development value, and we end up with our net residual land value. Now, for today's purposes, I'm going to be speaking about and showing an example in terms of a single column, meaning we haven't been taking in the time value of money. That will be more complex conversation, and we'll save it for another time. What I'm trying to do is just present concepts on, number one, what is the land residual value? And number two, what we can do to enhance land values. And I don't want people to get wrapped around the axle about my numbers, about how did you get this home price? How did you get these direct home construction costs? Just forget it. Just focus on the concepts. So with that, and as a reminder, the residual land value equals estimated gross development value, meaning what the project will generate, less the sum of all development costs, including a developer profit, which generally I've seen and we use anywhere from 8 to 15% of the gross development values. Once we back out those costs, then we have the amount of money that we can pay for the land to achieve our profit requirements and our return metrics. And that is the key related to our negotiations as it relates to either buying property or what we should be selling that property for. It depends on what side of the table you're on. With that, and if you take a look at the show notes, I've prepared a single column initial land residual analysis that breaks out the revenue in terms of a per unit revenue amount and cost amount, and then also show the total. The project that this hypothetical project that I'm looking at is 900 single family units selling for a net sales price of $425,000 each, which equals $382,500,000 in gross revenue. From that, I've got development costs for the infrastructure, home construction costs, development impact fees, financing costs, and a developer profit totaling $347,559,634. So when you back those costs out of the 382.5 million, we show a land residual of $34,940,366, or roughly $38,823 per lot. So this is the most simplistic way to show the land residual analysis. Gross revenues less costs, including your financing costs, marketing costs, and developer profit, equal land residual value. So going on, what are the drivers and what impacts land residual values? Well, once you understand the math, revenues less costs equal land residual, obviously the more revenues that we generate create a higher value, and the fewer development costs, construction costs that we have, decrease costs, therefore increasing land residual value. Now, if we were looking at this in terms of a time value of money over time, which is how we're really should be doing this, but for purposes of our conceptual discussion, we're not. To the extent that we're bringing revenues sooner into our cash flow and we're showing expenditures later, that would also impact our land values, as well as what is the discount rate that we would be utilizing to discount those revenues that would be coming in, and those costs that would be expended over time to today. And the one thing I'd like to point out is if you're using a discount rate, you have to be very careful that in your discount rate, you're not including entrepreneurial profit, because we've already included it in or developer profit, because we've already included it as a cost. So just make sure that if you're whether you're using single column, make sure you have the developer profit in. But if you're also extending this out over time, you need to be cognizant of whether you're keeping developer profit in your discount rate as well, and also backing it out of and including it as a cost, because then you'd be double counting developer profit, thereby decreasing the value of that land. So an important distinction to make, but one that needs to be made nonetheless. So what are the things that we can do to increase land residual values? I am going to be talking about land residual on what we can do with the skill sets that we, meaning the professionals at launch, bring to the table to help our clients enhance land value. And as I indicated in the initial podcast, as I indicated here again, when we kick this one off, everything I'm going to be discussing it is a means to enhance and impact the formula for land residual value. And in my world, that's the result of proper planning and preparing very thoughtful entitlement, development, and financing agreements to ensure that we can de-risk the transaction, and to be able to show a buyer, and I'm going to take the approach that we're working with the seller, that we have verifiable information that they can take to the bank and be ensured that we have done what we've said we've done, and that the figures we're showing, while there are estimates, are backed up by a certified cost by an engineer, by a recorded document that has been recorded with the county that we have these development agreements, or a district financing agreement, meaning the district's been informed, the district board has approved the GO bond election, and we're not going to get into a lot of different nuances of financing, but that we have the ability to tap in to use special district financings to finance infrastructure, etc. Meaning it's got to be certified, it's got to be recorded, it's got to be published, and so that we can provide that information to the buyer, and they're able to verify that yes, in fact, we have checked the box on that particular attribute of the project, and that is why we're showing it as an additional revenue source, or how we've come up with our cost estimates. Now, everything that we start working with the client, and the launch approach to adding value, is starting with our sit-down discussion with the client, and we call it our project vision discussion. Is what are you trying to achieve as it relates to this project that you're looking at? Here again, different clients have different have different goals. Some just want to plan, entitle, and flip. Some were plan, entitle, and develop it, maybe as super pads, maybe as finished lots. But regardless of what we're doing, at the end of the day, we need to be able to show that who's ever developing the property, that we have de-risked the transaction with verifiable information, and that the value and what we're saying that they can do is in fact something that it has been accomplished. And as a result of that, because it has been accomplished, we've de-risked the transaction. We've opened up the pathway for additional revenue. For instance, we can use special district financing. And whether they're a flipper or whether they're a developer, all of this information is important to them. So once we understand what the project vision is, then we get into, what are the dangers, opportunities, and strengths of this project, and with that, as it relates to to typical dangers that we run across, especially in the land residual value enhancement methodologies that we apply to our clients' projects, is how do we short circuit what can be very complex and lengthy jurisdictional approvals and avoid having to approach a jurisdiction in the future as it relates to matters of zoning, entitlement, and infrastructure finance. And that's one of the things that I'm most concerned about. Here again, if we're working in states like Arizona, this is more important than if we're in the county and doing a MUD in Texas. But here again, it's a framework and a training that we always need to be looking at, is how can we go faster? How can we create certainty that when it comes time to do something, we have the ability to do it, or if the market changes, we can switch horses in the middle of the stream and adapt to changing market conditions. And one of the examples I would like to throw out is one way that we short-circuited a very lengthy process was in the state of Arizona. We were working with the land developer and a public home builder at the time. We were annexing into a town, and because we had the town wanted to see growth. They wanted to see the public home builder to come in and build an active adult and a regular single family master plan community. We had a lot of leverage with the city at this point in time, or the town. I'll use those interchangeably. And as a result of it, we were doing a pre-annexation and development agreement. And one of the most important things for the home builder and the master developer was to be able to have a community facilities district that had very powerful financing attributes to it. And as a result of that, what we did is I completely wrote the what we call the CFD financing agreement. We attached it as part of our pre-annexation and development agreement, and said that at the sole discretion of the landowner home builder, when we approach the city to establish the community facilities district, that it will be established pursuant to the terms outlined in the agreement attached as Exhibit C. And Exhibit C was fully executable. It was something they had agreed to. So when it came time for us to form the district, it had already been negotiated. And so we were able to get the district formed. And as part of that, we had set out various types of authorizations that were pre-approved, meaning that we would have a bond election not to exceed $1.3 billion, and was the number that we utilized. But that's just one idea, because we had that pre-annexation and development agreement, because we had the pre-approved CFD development agreement. That was those were documents that we were able to show that that had been approved, or that would be approved upon our request to the town. And by the way, both of those districts were established. Some of the other things that that we really want to be thinking about in terms of enhancing value is what will be some of the potential zoning issues that we run into that could limit the supply or limit our ability to adapt to the market? And this really gets into the revenue side, but it also it impacts the cost side, meaning the thing that's really interesting right now, where we see in California, they have a thing called RENA analysis, or it's the regional housing needs allocation. And in California, for instance, this is the first time I'm seeing it, and I love it. Actually, it's been going on for a while, but the cities are being forced by the state to build affordable housing to address California's housing shortage. And it said that you will build no less than 2,000 homes on this. If you want to build more, go for it, because that helps us as a city address our RENA numbers. But at a minimum, you're going to build 2,000. And that's really kind of a neat approach, because most of the times we look at it, we're being capped as the number of houses. You can build only 2,000 houses. In California, it's a little different, where you have to build a minimum of 2,000. If you want to go higher, you can, and we'll work out how we can do that. But the reason I bring that up is the ways that we can impact our revenue number is by having higher densities. Sometimes we have to be careful with this, because oftentimes higher densities mean that we have bigger traffic impacts. We need bigger wastewater treatment and water treatment needs. We may have more open space, park requirements, fire, police and public safety. So it has to be all worked into the equation. But here again, that is one way that we can demonstrate that we could have higher revenue by having the ability to impact the number of units that we can build on site. Obviously, we want to be able to move densities around, so long as we're not uh, going over our densities that have been agreed upon, or our ways in which that we can increase densities over time. But we want to be able to move it from one part of the project to the another as markets dictate. Also, we want to set up ways that we can expedite permitting, set up density bonuses. For instance, if we're building more open space, we want to be able to add more residential units to our calculations. So these are all these are things that can impact our revenue numbers. Additionally, should we need to be able to change our development plan, it would be nice within these agreements to lay out pre-approved conditions that won't require us to get jurisdictional approval or general plan amendments. These are just minor amendments, so we don't have to go back and do a full-blown GP amendment, but we can move quickly. The other thing that we want to make sure we're putting in and addressing, because infrastructure is such a big deal right now and it's just getting more and more costly, is that when we request the formation of a special district, be it a CFD in Arizona, California, Washington State, or Hawaii, that we're able to do that, or a PID in Texas, or a CDD in Florida, Metro District in Colorado, all the different acronyms. When we come to ask the city, the jurisdiction, the county to form the district, that district will be formed. And as part of that, we've laid out the bond elections, the maximum effective assessments and tax rates, the different types of bonds that can be issued. If we're doing assessment bonds, what are the value to lien requirements, and how do we determine what market value is? Who will be governing the district, to the extent that we have the ability to influence that, and the selection of underwriters and district consultants. We want to have that in our venue. We're going to be setting up a district over our property, and we really can care about who is going to be issuing the bonds, what their costs are the consultants pro-growth or anti-growth? I've worked with both, and let me tell you, it's a lot easier to work with legal and financial advisors that want to move projects forward as opposed to kill them. What are the assessment methodologies? I mean, do we have the ability to build out of bond proceeds, or are we using this for reimbursements? All of those different types of things. Now, these are qualitative issues that if we're able to point out in a development agreement, in a financing agreement, and we're pointing out how we've de-risked the ability to issue bonds, that creates additional value. Now, does it show up in the numbers? Not necessarily. But once you're dealing with builders and or developers that have gone through these processes, and you're able to outline, here's what we did to make your life easier, they go, thank you, thank you, thank you. You fought for us. So now we just have to go do what we do, which is build communities. So other things we want to lay out, does the jurisdiction have any money? That's one thing we want to check, because if we can get the jurisdiction to build the infrastructure we need to build, and they are building it on their nickel, that's the best financing that we at launch could do. We have somebody else pay for it. So what is the jurisdiction going to build? Number one, what is the phasing? Okay, so are we required to just build to what the project is going to be required in terms of line size and water capacities, or are we having to build excess? Obviously, we don't want to build excess. If we are, we want the jurisdiction to pay their fair share upfront with us, pari passu. Are we setting up, are we building infrastructure that other clients, or excuse me, that other landowners are going to be benefiting that are surrounding our project? If so, let's work with the jurisdiction to require these other benefiting landowners to either be part of the district, in which we can tag them with bond issuances day one, or alternatively, let's set up a special mechanism whereby these benefiting landowners are paying their fair share cost 100% when they pull a permit, be it building permit or construction permit of a roadway, or record a track map, depending upon where they're at in the process. So also, to the extent that we can put language in the agreements that allows us to bypass jurisdictional approvals, or we have to get their permissions to do certain things, we want to be able to get that in our development agreements upfront. So those are things that can add tremendous value. And the way that I'm talking to the audience here today is that we can put anything down on a sheet of paper that we want. However, it's not real unless it's in an agreement that we can demonstrate to the seller that has been approved by the jurisdiction. It's been recorded. Here's the signed agreement with the county recorder stamp on it. This is real, and you can take this to the bank. So important. The other thing that we want to be able to do is to set up in our agreements the ability to defer upfront infrastructure costs until we get closer to a revenue event. And for us to wrap our head around what are all these things that we should be looking at, to what we call in launch parlay is the RED analysis, reduce, eliminate, defer analysis. We sit down with the opinion of probable costs, or the engineer's costs. We sit down with a phasing map, and we sit down with a land use plan showing the infrastructure as it's costed out and in the various phases. And we take a look at what can we do to reduce, eliminate, or defer the costs that were currently anticipated that the jurisdiction is wanting us to build as part of our entitlement process, until we have revenue coming in. Here again, on the single column land residual analysis, this doesn't pop up. But when we're looking at a DCF, or a discounted cash flow, determining land residual, this is a huge item. So we're always looking to either reduce some of the costs by having others pay their fair share, or having the city pay for it. Eliminate, meaning we don't want to build this this park, it's not needed, or we don't need this fire station. We already have ample service response times and it's not necessary. Or can we defer it? Meaning, do we have to build all 6 lanes of this arterial roadway day one, or can we build it over time as development of the project moves forward? Once we understand what all of those opportunities are, then we want to negotiate those and memorialize them in the development agreement or the pre-annexation and development agreement, depending upon where we're at. The other thing is that one of the things I love to do is talking to the jurisdiction or the agency to see if they have funding that they could utilize. And I'll just tell you, without even asking whatever city you're talking to, they'll say, no, we're completely broke. But what we will do is go and look at their comprehensive annual financial reports. It's called a CAFRA. And we will look to see what they have in terms of unrestricted funds in various capital accounts. And then we're able to just go point to the jurisdiction and said, hey, jurisdiction, on page 45 of your CAFRA, it shows that you have $80 million in unrestricted funds that can be used for water and sewer. We want you guys to put in that major water and sewer trunk line. And that way we're helping them find money to help us build infrastructure to help grow their city. The other thing is, if we can, we want to be able to say that we're not going to have any impact fees related to our project, because we're going to be building everything or paying for everything that we need to activate that. And so that's one thing that we can do to eliminate impact fees, just saying our districts are going to pay for it. Therefore, we've offset all of the municipalities or the agencies' requirements related to impact fees, and therefore we don't want to pay them, or we should credit out of them. And as a result of that, we're writing all of that into the DA as well. And then obviously, as it relates to the infrastructure, we're loading up with as much detailed financing language as we possibly can, so that we're able to create certainty as to what's going to happen when we ask the jurisdiction, the agency, to form the district. And then additionally, we'll put information in the development agreement related to when that infrastructure is going to be phased into the project, when it'll be constructed, etc. Here again, all of this information, when we prepare our single column land residual analysis, or if we have a DCF where we're doing the land residual, we want to be able to reference all of our assumptions to recorded documents, to construction cost estimates that are recent and are stamped by a PE, because everything we can do to show the buyer that we've done the homework, that we've been very thoughtful in what we've done. We've recorded, we've negotiated the agreements, and we've executed these, and they've been recorded. So this is everything that de-risks the transaction, which enhances land residual analysis. Sometimes one of the biggest issues that we always run across are coordination challenges, and some of these you may be able to address. Some of them you can't, just because you're dealing with too much bureaucracy. I typically run across this when we're having to build interchanges, where we're having a major traffic interchange off of an interstate, and we're having to work not only with the jurisdiction, but we're having to work with the county, we're having to work with the state, the Department of Transportation. Sometimes the state Department of Transportation says, yeah, that interchange, we're going to build it in 15 years. Well, we need to move it up in the queue. And the best way to be able to move it up in the queue is to show the state that we have funding to be able to work with the state's funds to build this. And by doing that, I typically need to have a special district that can help facilitate the construction of this interchange. Or we're working with the jurisdiction, and the jurisdiction is saying, yes, we're going to work with you, private sector. We will have a transportation impact fee that will impact both sides of the freeway. We're going to collect that money by the way, developer, if you're funding your fair share, you're going to credit out of this. But if you're, we can use this revenue to help pay, to issue bonds to help the state fund this infrastructure. Here again, I've been working with some projects literally for over 20 years because we can't fund interchanges. That's a whole nother topic. We'll save it for for a different podcast. But yeah, the point is, we sometimes we have really big infrastructure, and there's huge amount of coordination challenges that we have to deal with. And to the extent that we can deal with these upfront, that's the best thing that we can possibly do. The other thing that we're always cognizant about is, especially for the big MPCs, is that we're going to go through recessions. I mean, it's just the way it is. These projects are so large that we may go up and down in terms of good times, bad times. And then additionally, the demographics are going to change, consumer preferences are going to change, new building typologies are going to come out, and we want our ability to address this. So these are things that we need to be able to show a potential buyer that we've addressed it. And here again, this is not necessarily going to impact your numbers, but it will be able to show the buyer how we've thought about this, how we've planned for changes, and how we've worked this into the agreements so that they can zig when they need to zig and they can zag when they need to zag as it relates to changing market conditions. The other thing that we sit down with, so that kind of handles some of the dangers. We didn't go through all of them, but then we also want to understand what the opportunities are. So for instance, are you as a land seller willing to potentially enter into a JV with another partner? Are you willing to allow a potential JV partner or buyer to establish a district that you may be selling to them, or selling your project to the buyer over time in terms of an option agreement? But these are things that we need to understand what our clients are willing to do, what they're not willing to do. This may go into the land residual analysis, it may not. But it's just one of those subjective things we're trying to parse out of our clients when we sit down and have the project vision conversation with them, as well as discussing other opportunities they may or may not be willing to do. Uh, the other opportunity that we see a lot with big projects is, what is their physical location? How close, do they have access to, do they have topography changes, which can be both good and bad? Good because now you have ability for view premiums. Bad because now you got huge grading issues and infrastructure issues that we need to address as well. Are you located near a lake? Do you have some other type of physical characteristic that would make your project more marketable and to both a seller, or excuse me, a buyer and home buyers, that could increase your absorption or not? And are you located in a jurisdiction that's willing, is pro growth, pro development, willing to help you finance the infrastructure that's necessary to get this project funded? And also, are you closer to existing infrastructure, meaning you don't have to run your infrastructure 14 miles to the wastewater treatment plant? You're just running it, it's in the road, and you're able to access a big trunk line and flow down to the plant. The other thing that we want to make sure that we're creating the opportunity, and that this is very, very clear. I should have mentioned that, but that when we're doing the development agreements, we're doing it under our name, but we're saying that all of these rights run with the land, and that to the extent that we're selling this property to others, once they take title, all of the rights and responsibilities that are included in the development agreement go to the buyer of this. The and typically, prior to us going to negotiate an agreement with the cities, with the agencies, we're really looking upon what our strengths are of our client, meaning how long have you been in the business? What is your team experience? What is your reputation in the market? Who are your financial partners, your financing team, your consultants? Because all of that helps us to in our negotiations. Here again, they're more subjective than objective. But if we're able to go to a jurisdiction and say, we're XYZ developer, and this is our 15th master plan community in this market, that goes a long way, as opposed to saying we're two guys in a truck LLC and this is our first MPC. But we want to be able to, at launch, to come in and supplement your strengths and be part of your team to give you more confidence in the terms that we're moving this project forward. So these are all things that we take a look at in terms of how we can impact value. Other things you'll want to do, obviously, are sit down with your engineers. What can we do to value engineer the improvements? Is there better locations or other ways that we can think about these roadways, where they should go, how that impacts our phasing, how it helps us reduce costs without sacrificing quality of our master plan communities. The other things we really encourage our clients to do is, is to get third-party input in terms of what products we need to build, what we think the price points will be, what the absorption will be in terms of price and pace. And so go talk to an RCLCO, a John Burns, a Zonda, a Concord Group, a Clarity, a CBAS, depending. These are all names that we deal with on a continual basis. But it's good to get that information, because as we're putting forth our numbers, we want to be able to demonstrate that, hey, we talked to this third-party consultant and this is their expert opinion in terms of price and pace. So the big picture on ways that we can impact and substantiate our value creation. Here again, the key, and that I'll continue harping on this, is we need to memorialize this. So all of these different levers that we can pull, that ultimately at the end of the day will be some sort of subjective, meaning we've de-risked the transaction as it relates to our negotiations with the city, or what we're going to have to negotiate with them in the future about, or we've established the district and we're good to go. We have the ability to issue $800 million worth of bonds. I mean, we've created a tremendous amount of value, and those will be objective and numeric, that will show up in the single column and or the DCF that we're going to be preparing for the land residual analysis. So with that, assuming that we've done everything I've just said, what does that mean in terms of how we've impacted the land residual analysis? And if you go to your show notes now, you will see that I've added a revised land residual, in which we still have the same home sales revenue. I haven't impacted that at all. We're still at 425,000 net per door. But now I've assumed that we've increased, or we've established a community facilities district where we have the ability to issue both special assessment bonds. In this case, I'm assuming a maximum assessment bond of $12,375, which isn't a big number. And that we also have the ability to issue GEO bonds at a $3 ad valorem tax rate. And as a result of that, we're pulling an additional $21,000 and bringing that in terms of net bond proceeds. And also, we've been able to sit down with the jurisdiction and set up a mechanism whereby other benefiting landowners are going to be paying us for the offsite infrastructure we're building that's going to benefit their projects. And in this example, I've assumed that number is $20,000 per door. Here again, the numbers are just made up. So what have we done? We've now increased our total revenues, and here again, I'm showing the bonds coming in as a revenue event as opposed to a decrease in construction costs. It's just easier to show that, as well as our infrastructure reimbursements. Of 18 million, we've now increased our total revenues to $419,795,000. Here again, just by setting up a district and setting up a reimbursement mechanism where the city agency has agreed to require other benefiting landowners to pay their fair share of the infrastructure. Secondly, when you go down and take a look at some of the costs, you'll see that for our site acquisition, here again, we have 0 in because that's the number we're solving for. We've broken our development costs out that we're $99,000 a door into both costs that are financeable through the CFD and those that are not. We've got the same home construction costs, and we're now showing that we were able to go in and take a look at our development impact fees, and we noticed that of the $11,000 that the jurisdiction is going to be charging us, actually it's closer to $12,000 per door, or $10.6 million, that some of the infrastructure we're actually building, roughly 3 million of that is eligible for impact fee credits, so that we're showing a credit of $3 million. So now we've been able to decrease our construction costs to $344.5 million. And now our land residual value has increased up to $75.2 million. And because we've documented all of this, meaning the establishment of the CFD, the reimbursement mechanism, and the development impact fee credits as part of our pre-annexation and development agreement, or development agreement, and in our district financing agreements, we can show to the buyer that this is already agreed to. This flows through our land residual value. Therefore, if you're still wanting to make that 12% profit that we're showing is reasonable, then you can afford to pay $75.2 million, or roughly $83,000 per lot. So here again, and if you take a look at the before and after in our analysis, you'll see that we've increased the percentage change in the land residual is 115%. Now, here again, guys, this is just an illustration. Every project's going to be different, but I want to show you conceptually how you can impact land residual, and my opinion and my recommendation on how you can substantiate and prove up your numbers. So I hope that you found that this was helpful. Here again, take a look at the show notes. We have all this information laid out so you can follow. And you may want to go back and listen to this again, because we covered a lot of topics. Each one of these topics could be their own podcast. But the idea that I hope we accomplished here today is how you can impact through your entrepreneurial talents the land residual value of your development, either that will flow to you, or that you can demonstrate to a buyer on what you've done to de-risk that transaction. And as a result of you de-risking and increasing the opportunities for them, you need to get paid for that. So if you enjoyed this podcast, I encourage you to pass it on to your team members, and encourage you to subscribe to the Land to Lots podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for your time.
You have been listening to the Land to Lots podcast with Carter Froelich. Follow us wherever you find your podcast to never miss a new episode.